It's Talladega week. We made it back again. We're still going to try and wreck the field. Just going to be doing one video this weekend for all three series. Going to probably be around 15 minutes. Mainly just touching on some storylines that I think you need to pay attention to entering this week. And then just how I'm approaching this event or this weekend. In terms of the Cup Series, logically thinking, the backmarker teams should use this opportunity or should use this race for an opportunity to buy surplus motors, cars that teams don't want to use or teams that are selling on the cheap, cars that are specifically designed for aerodynamics and top speed and actually competitive times, because this is the last time we're ever using these cars at plate races ever again. We're going to the next gen car next year. These cars, these motors, everything on these cars will never be raced at a plate track again. Not a plate track, Brandon, you know what I mean. So, we see Allgaier in the field, and I'll put some stuff up on the screen a bit, but we see Allgaier in the field. We see Haley in the field, Castle in the field. I would imagine that people like BJ McLeod are putting money into this car. We've already seen that he's been buying Roush Yates motors this year. They're just a bit underpowered because, yet again, they don't have that much money, but they're still the fastest of the back markers. As much as people want to shit on, the Rick Ware cars and, even David Starr, Carl Long has been known to lease Toyota motors at the speedways for his Xfinity team. Rumor had it that they did that for David Starr at Daytona, ran into mechanical issues with the motor. It wasn't set up properly. They weren't necessarily down a cylinder, but the ECU wasn't set up the way it needed to be, and that's why David Starr was so slow. Even then, sure, these guys got lapped and stuff, but they didn't bring cars that just straight up DNF'd or, they had to pull off. They were cars that all, attempted to finish the race. They were all there at the end. And so I'm going to argue that this might be the final and best time to really target the back markers. And I know how unattractive that sounds in playing them, especially for the Cup Series, but that's my advice to you. And that kind of goes for all the series. The Xfinity cars are most likely going to see a different body being attached to the car next year. Well, they will. There's some rumors that they might attach different safety features to the chassis as well, so technically these cars won't be allowed to race next year. Can't confirm or deny that, just throwing things out there. Same thing for the Truck Series. We've already seen that, and the Truck Series is usually more lenient on allowing older types of cars to race, but they're still going to be doing the same thing next year. And so even for the Truck Series they're not racing at the plate tracks as much next year. I'm pretty sure that the Truck Series only has 2 plate races next year, and one is in Daytona earlier in the year, and then one is at the very end of the year at Talladega, and typically they outlaw older body styles and older chassis mid-year, so around June, July. As we saw this year, I think they finally got rid of 2018 body panels, and certain things are from the 2019 year. And so, let me just check real quick. Yeah, Truck Series schedule 2022. But that has to be, put into your mind that they're not going to be going to these tracks as much. Let's just go ahead here. Let's take a gander really fast. So yeah, I'm looking at the schedule right now. Truck Series go to Daytona February 8th. They do not go to any other plate races or big super speedways until we go to Talladega on October 1st. And so there's a chance that a lot of these trucks will never be raced again on the plate races, maybe saved for Daytona. But you get the idea, like, these cars are not replaceable, but they're being, pushed out. Like, a lot of these teams have nothing to lose. It was the same thing in the Xfinity Series on the last race that they allowed steel bodies, is that a lot of guys took their old steel body cars out there with nothing to lose. So at least I'm thinking that the Truck Series most likely not going to really use these trucks again. Xfinity Series most likely not really focused on saving these cars. Cup Series for sure don't give a fuck about saving these cars. And so I think this is a week to where a lot of teams, this is really their last chance to maybe put some money in on the cheap and have a chance to drive well. And so let's go ahead and start talking about the Cup Series and kind of how I approach this. So let me move it. And I also want to start off by just giving a visual example. And so I always talk about how I stack from the back. And I know people on Twitter are like, all right, guys, it's time to stack from the back. But what people see there, or what they do in their minds, is they look at the back of the field and they're like, okay, stack from the back. Okay, Allgaier, Landon Castle, Corey LaJoie's been good at plate tracks. Newman starting 25th, Buescher starting 24th. That's good to see. And maybe we'll play Jones. And so most people look and see stack from the back, or look at the back 20 or back 20 starting cars, and in your mind you're like, I don't want to put money on fucking Joey Gaze, I don't want to put money on Justin Haley, I don't want to put money on David Starr. But I would advise to really, really legit play the guys from the back, play starting positions, don't care about the drivers. One, because drivers that should be as owned as drivers that should be owned more are never owned. Like, we talked about it on Stacking Dinnings with Jordan last night. Go listen to that if you haven't already. But we kind of talked about how ownership on good cars in the back, like Landon Castle, Kaz Grala from Daytona earlier last month, their ownerships weren't high enough. Like, those guys, I honestly believe ownerships for this week, it's not going to be, but what you should play, I think Allgaier should be 75% owned. I think Castle should be 90% owned. They're going to be the chalk plays in the back, but Castle's probably going to come in around 25, maybe 28%. Justin Allgaier, maybe 26, 22, somewhere around there. If they get in the 30s, I'll be shocked, but it still needs to be higher. The chance that these good cars in the back get into being, top 20 DFS scorers is way higher than what their ownership should be. The guys back here, David Starr, Justin Haley, throw Haley in that category as well. Haley, Castle, Justin Allgaier, those should be the guys that, in my opinion, you build around, because they're the good cars in the back, and they're not going to be as highly owned as they should be. Now, with that said, I think, and what I do is I usually carry more ownership to the Rick Ware cars, especially Quinn Houff, what's their crew name? What's their team name? Starcom. Starcom is gone. They're not racing anymore. They got bought out. Starcom does not have a charter next year. This is their final plate race. They got absolutely nothing to lose. And I'll show you in the example that I did earlier for the Xfinity Series at Daytona last month. I want to be overweight on the field. I want to have a majority of my ownership to these guys. And when I say a majority, I mean close to 40, 50, 60% of my ownership is going to be on these final back markers. Brandon, that's not optimal. I don't give a flying fuck about being optimal this week. Okay? You hit the optimal lineup, it's luck. If you're talking optimal, and I'm going to see it in the comments, or I'm going to see it in videos, well, when you look at the optimal, you always have one car, usually starting inside the 20s, maybe 2 to 3 in the 20s, maybe 1 in the 30s. You want to talk about gambling. You want to talk about randomness. This is a roulette wheel. If we backdoor walk into the optimal lineup, that's great. But I just want to build lineups that are easily going to min cash or 2x, or even possibly finish in the top 3 or 4% of the GPPs, especially with how small these contests are. I don't want to waste time building or putting ownership to guys starting inside the top 10 who are just going to end up not scoring as much as guys starting in the 20s and guys starting in the 30s. Personally, that's just how I build. That's just how it is. Good plays that I think you should play that probably won't be played as much as they should: Anthony Alfredo, Corey LaJoie, Priest, and most likely, I'm going to probably say BJ McLeod and Cody Ware. I would argue putting more ownership to these 5 guys than you might do to begin with, because when we look at these races, they're all about ownership. And so right now, who's going to carry ownership in this race? So let's just look at that. So Castle is going to carry ownership. Haley's going to, let's get that off. Haley's going to carry ownership. We're going to see Allgaier carry ownership. We're going to see LaJoie carry ownership based on track history. And we're going to see Newman carry ownership. We're probably going to see Buescher carry ownership. Michael McDowell as well. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is going to carry a ton of ownership because he finishes well in races that he doesn't wreck in. And so let's just kind of talk about these guys right here. We'll color code them in orange. I think these are going to be the highest owned drivers outside the top 20. And so for me, you either go overweight on them or just be overweight on, not necessarily pivot, but why am I going to play Corey LaJoie when he's probably going to come in around 24% ownership? Well, I could probably play Anthony Alfredo for around 17, or at least a less amount of ownership for guys that have very, very similar upside. Same thing with Cole Custer. Like Cole Custer, despite the fact he's been running like absolute garbage lately, it's a Stewart-Haas car in a Ford, which Ford still have the aerodynamic advantage on these plate tracks. Like, play Cole Custer, play Priest. Don't even worry about the names, really. Brandon, you don't have salaries. What are you doing? I never even look at salaries. I don't even care about salaries at all. Unless there's a situation, and it's not going to happen, because even when it happened, it kind of happened in the Xfinity Series at Daytona, this previous race, when you had some guys in the back and they were 10 grand, it was still stupid easy to stack from the back. And so for the Cup Series, these are the guys that I think you need to carry ownership to. I know the likelihood of these guys, the likelihood of 3 of these guys being optimal in a lineup, pretty slim. Likelihood of 2 of these guys being optimal, at least in the blue, I'd give that maybe a 40%. When we start moving up here, we're going to have Bubba Wallace racing up front. We're going to have Eric Almirola racing up front. Suarez is running up front as well. Risky plays, in my opinion. You're starting 18, 19, and 20. If you lose any position, you're going to end up negative, or you're going to be giving me 1 or 2 points. I will happily take a Rick Ware car. This is a bad example because Bilicki finished 11th or inside the top 15 at Daytona. But I'll happily take Josh Bilicki in a situation where he gets me 9 points than playing Chase Briscoe or Suarez, or insert anybody starting inside the top 20 who gives me negative 3 points. Like, that's just how I approach these races. Personally, for me, my player pool does not include anybody inside the top 10. So my player pool is from Alex Bowman down. If I'm playing guys, I don't really want to talk about the 4, 2, 3, because I just get questions about that. Just build a lineup that has a majority of your cars, in my opinion, starting outside the top 20. That's just how I would approach it. Brandon, what's your proof here? How are you talking? Well, let's look at the Xfinity Series this weekend. See kind of how these guys are starting, and let's look back at how I approached this race in Daytona. And I think this is a perfect example of how I look at things. You'll recognize this from the Daytona video that I did earlier this year, or like a month ago. I keep forgetting it's a month ago. It's no longer August 27th, last time I touched this. And so, same thing here. My main player pool I wanted to use was outside the top 20. Now, these guys didn't wreck. So, I believe I only had maybe 2 or 3 of these lineups actually min cash, but I had ownership everywhere. I owned the back 17 starting positions. This is my first run. I think this is around 11, 12 lineups. But these are the lineups I made. I can't think of a better example to show, and I probably need to move my big head out of here. Hold on. I can't think of my head's being cut off by the Patreon logo. I can't think of a better way to talk about this than showing the lineups that I build for Wreckfests, or 4 races where I think we're going to see a Wreckfest. So I make sure I cover the back end. These 2 lineups, pretty poor lineups. I just always like throwing them in there. After that, we get into the real distribution of how I want to play lineups in this race. Chase Briscoe was chalk in the background. I'll probably zoom back in so you can kind of see them. So in this race, Chase Briscoe was chalk, and so I got more of his ownership once I started getting enough lineups. I think I made 18 lineups in this one. But Chase Briscoe was the chalk. Jason White was the chalk. J.J. Yaley was the chalk. And so initially, a lot of my lineups were avoiding those 3 guys. I was trying to cover other angles. And so you can see, I'm 5 lineups in, and I catalog them as I make them so I can see where I'm going at certain positions. Once I get the back done, or once I feel comfortable hitting enough guys in the back, that's when I start building lineups, pushing inside the 20s, pushed inside the teens. And so what is this? Why is this angled out right here? Why do I have a grayed out blob? Because as I'm making lineups, And as I'm looking through, I'm like, okay, Brandon, I need to have some more ownership, at least to these types of drivers. And so I probably need Colin Garrett in a line. Let's see, I probably need Daniel Hamrick in a line. Probably Myatt Snyder, Ryan Vargas. I think they're going to ride all right. I'll put them together in a line. Who's this? I'll put, I think I need Alex Labane in a line. And so as I'm going through lines, I'm basically, as I always say, I'm playing positions. I'm not playing the drivers. You can block out the drivers and you can just see. Here, I'll do this real time. So if I block the drivers out, these are the positions I have covered. These are the lineups that I ran, and this is how the race went. And so you're like, well, Brandon, you just said you didn't make it. I didn't. I lost a shit ton of money on this race. I made 18 lines, entered 18 lines in the 10, the 3, the 2, the 1, 25 cent, 50 cent. Other lines that came, some of these lines, I think it was the blue, the yellow, I don't remember which other one. I entered them a couple single entries, the 12, 33. Lost a ton of money in this race because these guys didn't wreck. But when we compare the drivers that I have here in comparison to how they finish, and so I'm overweight. Here, we'll go back to, obviously this is the initial run ownership, but we're going to use this for the example because it shows how I kind of like approaching here. So when we look at the finishing order of this race, let me get this down a little bit. So when we look, oh man, give me a second here, boys. I apologize. So when we look at the finishing order of this race, we got Brandon Jones. I'm on the wrong one here. Oopsie. So we have Brandon Jones. For whatever reason, they willingly blew their motor. I have no idea why they didn't pit and put water in that. Whatever. Austin Cindric gets crashed. He gets turned by Myatt Snyder coming out of the Trioval. He gets in a wreck. Spencer Boyd has an engine issue. Colin Garrett gets spun out. Cesar Bassarelli, literally the guy who always spins out on plate races. Nobody plays him. I like having 57% ownership to him because nobody's going to plan. He wrecked. But how did Cesar Bassarelli do? Okay, he finished 36. Not a great DFS day. But when you look at the ownership that Cindric had, that Brandon Jones had, these are absolutely negative points. Let's see where Austin Cindric started. Cindric started 14th, finished close to DFL. Brandon Jones started 3rd. People are playing these drivers starting in the back, and I'm not. I'm getting off them completely. And so when we look at the finishing order, I don't own nearly anybody who finishes inside the top 10 outside of, I think, Christopher Bell, Jason White, JJ Gailey, and David Starr. I have the entire back half of the field in lineups pretty much. And so and this is the scenario that I kind of build for, if these idiots wreck for the lead towards the end of the race, taking out a lot of the chalk plays, a lot of the good plays that are good because they're fast. Christopher Bell, fast car. Jason White, an amazing plate racer. JJ Gailey, an amazing plate racer who's going to be racing up front and should finish up front if the race goes green. If these guys wreck, I don't have them. I gain the positions and I jump over the ownership that these guys have. And so this is an example of how I'm approaching all the races this weekend. This is probably not exactly these lines, but this is how I'm going to be building lines. These positions, you can see the amount of money I leave on the table. It's anywhere from, $8,000, $15,000, $15,600, 14.2, 15.8, all the way to $900 and $0 left. I'm all over the field, or I'm all over the place when it comes to the amount of money or salary that I'm using. And so when we look at, let me move that back. So when we look at this weekend here at Talladega, same thing for the Cup Series. Let's kind of identify who's going to be the chalk plays in the back. It's going to be JJ Yaley. It's going to be Jason White. I imagine it's going to be Alex Labate as well, possibly Jordan Anderson. And outside of that, we probably have more. Right now, I can't imagine. Probably David Starr is the other one. And so I would imagine right now, a vast majority. We'll add Joe Graff Jr. to that. Where's Joe Graff in terms of finishing positions? Because track history at both Daytona and Talladega usually dictate ownership. This is just kind of me spitballing, but thinking right now. So if these guys are the chalk plays, Like, I think Jason White's probably going to be one of the highest owned. Same thing with JJ Yaley, where I tell you what, I'm going to be playing 40-50% Cesar Passarelli all over again. Brandon, you're insane. What the fuck are you playing him for? Caesar's finishes at Daytona and Talladega: 36, 12, 36, 29, 30, 28, 38, 13, 34th, 14th, 17th. Why are you playing this, man? Because nobody else is going to. I just play the ownerships at plate races, and I build lineups specifically for Wreckfest. Usually if I build enough lines, like I just showed you in this instance, if a lot of people wreck, most of these lineups will min cash. I usually have that 2 weekends a year. Pretty much all the years I've been playing DFS. Right now, it's only worked at Daytona, Talladega, or the spring race at Talladega, and this Daytona weekend that we just had for the Xfinity series didn't work. They really didn't wreck. The first Talladega race, because it ended under rain when Jeb Burton won, nobody wrecked. Here, nobody wrecked at Daytona. I'm well aware that if they don't wreck, these lineups are not cashing, which ended up happening. I think, like I said, I only had 2 or 3 lineups end up cashing. If we have a wreck fest, a majority of these lineups normally min cash 2x and even get higher depending on who you have and where your ownership is if it's a wreck fest, especially in the big GPP. I don't know if it'll be as extreme because these GPPs this week should be pretty small and pay out pretty shitty, but that's how I enter, or that's how I build lineups. And so looking at Talladega, who do I want to be? Santino Ferrucci's probably going to carry ownership too because he's in the Sam Hunt car. Who do I want to be overweight on? Joey Gaze, CJ, Garrett Smithley, Earnhardt, Mills, Massey for sure. I think I might have the most ownership to Massey just because he's visually an ugly play. He's not far enough from the back. He's not in a good car, yada, yada, yada. But Mason Massey's going to survive chaos. He's not going to be racing in the field. And if he does, hopefully he doesn't get wrecked. He's starting 27th. If he finishes 37th, that's negative 11 points due to the difference in, 31st to 30th, minus the 10 place differential points. Not the best day, but he's still going to score better if he finishes, 32nd, to whereas we run into another situation of a good driver, somebody's going to carry ownership, say the colleague cars, hello, if A.J. Allmendinger wrecks and he finishes 33rd, he's a fucking horrible play. If he starts 5th and ends 5th, he's most likely not going to be optimal. For me, I think Cindric and the colleague cars are going to carry a shit ton of ownership because when you look at the finishing positions of the colleague cars, you see A.J. Allmendinger, 2nd, 5th, 15th, 3rd, 25th, and 7th. You look at Justin Haley, 1st, 29th, 1st, 6th, 2nd, 17th, 18th, 8th, 1st, and 7th. When you look at Jeb Burton, 4th, 23rd, 1st, and 3rd. Those are the finishing positions at both Daytona and Talladega for the colleague cars. They look like absolutely great plays. When it comes to plate races, I don't care about fast laps. I don't care about laps led. I care about ceiling projections. This is the only time I really build lineups chasing ceiling projections, chasing ceiling outcomes. And when you look at A.J. Allmendinger, when you look at Justin Haley, when you look at Jeb Burton's ceilings, they're not that high. Personally, I do believe that one of them is optimal if colleague continues the race the way they are. Most likely going to be Jeb Burton. If they end up finishing 1, 2, 3 again, Jeb Burton has the best chance of being optimal out of those 3 guys. But I'm not going to carry any ownership to these people because I think they're going to be owned. I think people are going to see how well they've performed and play them. And I'm just going to hope they wreck. They've done it before, certainly on the last lap when Chastain was with them. And so that's how I'm approaching the Xfinity series. I'm probably going to have ownership probably like I did last time. So last time I owned up to the 17th position. That's probably what I'm going to do here. I might end up... So this one was a bit extreme this previous time around because we had, Briscoe in the back, JJ Yaley, Jason White in the back. While we do have those guys in the back, we really don't have any of the, star teams in the back outside of Yaley and Jason White and Santino. And Jason White's in the MBM car, but he puts his own he brings his own motor, his own car here. He just likes running these tracks. And so this is a race where I probably want to cap my player pool at probably Brandon Brown or Tommy Joe Martins, because all these guys look very, unappealing in a sense of, real life. But on fantasy, this is who I want to focus on. Sieg is the first good car starting close to the back. Same thing with Brett Moffitt. I think they'll carry more ownership than they should. There's no reason Ryan Sieg should carry more ownership than Bailey Curry, in my opinion. Landon Castle will carry ownership as well. Landon Castle is really consistent, and a lot of people are going to be playing him on Sunday. So Castle will probably carry the most ownership in the 25, probably the 16th range. And why am I playing Landon Castle when I could just play Ryan Vargas for way lower ownership? Williams will probably carry ownership too. So why am I going to play Williams when I can play Jade Buford for much less ownership? Just an ownership game. I'm hoping that the GPP is... If the GPPs are smaller, I won't be as extreme on pivoting off the chalk plays. It just depends on how big the GPPs are. Finally, let's talk about the Truck Series here. Same thing here. Now, they've done it before to where these dumbasses have wrecked the guys in the back and killed my lines before we even really got started. I'm pretty sure it's the fall race last year in the Truck Series at Talladega is when they wrecked on lap 1. No, they wrecked on lap... It may have been this one or the... Let's go ahead and dive down together, because I know it was last year. I don't remember if it was the first one. Actually, they only raced the Talladega once last year. Pretty sure it was this one. Yeah, it was when it was when the Pierce won, racefortheprize.com, the sheet that I look at. Pierce took down this contest because I remember Rafael Lessard won this race. And so let's square this away by starting position. I had a ton of ownership to guys in the back. And what happened? These guys wrecked in the back in turn 3. Basically, a lot of the backmarker cars wrecked themselves. And got torn up. And so you had Joe Nemechek, a guy who I was overweight on because I don't think anybody was going to play him. Dawson Cram, before people knew who Dawson Cram was, I was playing a lot of him in this situation. Corbin Forrester, a guy that, yet again, really came out of nowhere. He used to race, but a lot of ownership wasn't on him. And they got torn up. This race ended up, let's see, let's go back to finishing positions here. When we look at, where these guys started and how they did, Spencer Boyd played a lot of. Nemechek played a lot of. Corbin played a lot of. Cram played a lot of. I know I played a lot of Danny Bone. So, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 guys in my player pool that kind of wrecked on lap 12 that were taken out. So that's the risk you take when you take a lot of these back marker cars. They can still wreck and kill you. So even like Brian Dossack starting dead last. This is a situation to where Brian started 38th, is just off pace, not racing, not even in play, finishes 21st. What is he doing this weekend? Starting 40th. Do I expect a 21st place finish? No, I'm probably going to give Brian probably a 28th, 30th place finish. Norm Benning, going to be off pace. Most likely going to get black flag and have to park it. Do I want to... Norm and the Rheum cars, I am concerned about being black flag for not maintaining speed, but I'm not going to be as heavy on Norm Benning. I'll probably have 20% Norm Benning. You're like, oh, that's great. Well, if I make 20 lines, what is that? Only 4? Is it? No, it'd be 2. What am I talking about? Or no, yeah, 20% of 20 is 4. Yeah, like if I make 10 lines, do I want to have 10% ownership to Norm Benning? Yeah, I'll throw him in one line. We'll do that. And yeah, like Park Kligerman, going to carry ownership. Jason White, going to carry ownership. Jordan Anderson, going to carry ownership. And so when we're looking at the Truck Series, this is the race where I'm most likely to fade chalk. And so I want to be underweight on Kligerman, on Jason White, and Jordan Anderson. And I want to be overweight on people like Lawless Allen, people like Clay Greenfield, people like Cody Roper, people like Willie Allen, because people are going to be like, who the fuck is Willie Allen? I'm not going to play him. I'm going to play him. He's starting 30th. Nobody's going to play him. That's just how it is. And same thing here. So when we get up to people like Ankrum, people like Boyd, Haley Deegan, Lupton, Jack Wood. These guys are probably going to carry ownership as well. Don't know what it's going to necessarily be, but I know they're going to carry more ownership than these guys. So I would probably want to be overweight on these 4 versus these 4. That's just how I'm going to approach it. And last but not least, this is the last real chance because we're going to have qualifying next year, at least for Xfinity. I know we have qualifying at every race for Xfinity, practice at certain races. Haven't looked in the truck series, but I'm pretty sure it's going to have qualifying as well. Practice might not be at every race. And so we're most likely going to go back to 32 trucks in the truck series. So this is the last plate race where we have 40 trucks taking the green at a plate race. And so that's another reason a lot of these teams, this is really their last chance to get out there. Maybe, buy it. I know they're all spec engines, but actually get a motor that's prepared by, say, like ThorSport or Kyle Busch Motorsports or GMS. Or, hey, GMS, do you have a truck that you're not going to use? Yeah, we're selling this one because we're probably not going to use it again. Oh, hey, let me buy it and use it for this race. I'm a team that's most likely, I'm Keith McGee. Maybe that doesn't work. I'm Brian Dossat. I got nothing to lose. Might be my last real chance to make one of these plate races. Hey, GMS, could I buy that? Not saying Brian has a GMS truck. I'm just giving that as an example of what I imagine some of these guys have to be saying. Like, hey, this could be the last chance I really race in the series. Last chance I really have a shot of making a race at Talladega in the truck series. And so I firmly believe that all 3 of these races, truck series might wreck a bit more early, certainly towards the end of the stages, but I have a feeling that a lot of these races are going to be extremely boring for 95% of the race, and then the field's going to wreck with 10 to go, 15 to go, 20 to go. And so I just want to have guys that aren't caught up and that can take advantage of the late race wrecks. And so taking guys in the back that might go a lap down is a bit risky because if, say in the Cup Series, if I have a guy 4 laps down, the field trashes shit on lap 187, and for whatever reason the green-white checkered starts on 188, they have a quickie yellow or whatever they want to do, the race ends on 191, my guy isn't able to catch up. My guy isn't able to get to lap 187, or he takes lap 187 as the leaders take the checkered, and he technically doesn't pass those other cars. And so that is a risk you take, or I take here. I'm okay with that. So, if it's a situation to where the Xfinity Series doesn't wreck and I have a shitload of lineups and a shit ton of ownership to the guys in the back, and I don't cash, or I have 1 or 2 lineups cash and I'm out, $400 something, I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly fine with that, because if I can get a majority of these lineups to min cash, I'll get my money back and then some, especially with how shitty the payout structures are for some of these contests. You either need to have a lineup finish inside the top 10 and still have other lineups min cash, or just have a ton of your lineups min cash 2x, somewhere around there, to do well. I'm not aiming for optimal here. I'm just aiming for the opportunity to have a ton of my lineups score well. And I think the best case of that is to just, at least for me over the years, is to just go overweight on playing guys from the back. The 4 weekends a year we go to Daytona and Talladega, and give me 2 of those races that have Wreckfest, that I build for, and that I can cash in. And so right now, we're 1 for 3 this weekend. So if everything evens out, and normally the Daytona Fall Race and the Talladega Fall Race are the weekends that we tend to see more wrecks, hopefully we end up cashing this weekend. Thank you for listening. Patreon starts again on the 1st. If you're not a member of my Patreon, please join if you would like to see what I do. I understand the NFL season's going on, but I do appreciate you being here and supporting me. I probably need to move my head down. It's probably been cut off the entire time. But thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. If I helped you at any point, either in this race, this weekend, this year, consider donating on PayPal. That really supports me, and I like getting money on PayPal. And a lot of you guys send me tips. A lot of you guys message me on Twitter saying, hey, you did this, or I cashed here. Just thank you guys. So that's really all I have. Thank you for watching. Thank you for donating. Thank you for being part of the Patreon. And thank you for being here. No live shows Friday or Saturday, but I will be live on Sunday, 11 Eastern, with Jordan talking about the Cup Series at Talladega. That's the plan this weekend, and we will see you guys next time. So see you then.